Where are we right now?
We are at the future. It's hard to frame it right. Like it's like a restaurant in the making, or it's a future restaurant. But so much of it is coming together already. Like we've got hood vents and we got a takeout window. Hey, Garmamie. I'm Tarek of Gongfu Bao. We're opening a restaurant here in Centertown at 365 Bank. And our core offering is bao, or steamed buns. Steamed bun is essentially a steamed yeast leavened bread filled with various tasty things. It's of Chinese and Taiwanese origin. We handcraft each and every bao that we make here. Yeah, so we're hustling hard to get construction done and open up our doors and our takeout window at the heart of Centertown. So I know you guys have been on standby for bao for quite some time now, and I can't wait to get back to feeding you. So yes, this is the site of Gongfu Bao.
Gilmore and Bank in the heart of Centertown, right? In the heart of Ottawa.
Yeah,
awesome location. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty. I'm still baffled by this location. When I decided to take the cart brick and mortar, because I started very iteratively in terms of developing this food business, the next reasonable step for me was to find a turnkey. Find an existing restaurant that had gone out of business and take over, do some minor adjustments, do a little bit of an investment, and turn it into our first brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. With the caveat that if I found the perfect spot, I would consider going all the way. And this to me is actually the perfect spot.
This is a slam dunk right here, right in the heart of Ottawa in the National Capital Region. Now, when you're standing here in this space, what are you feeling?
My first sensation was that it's growing so fast, which kind of reminded me of the kind of things that I've heard friends that have children say. It's really like coming along at a very steady clip. And I'm very eager to see where construction and where the interior design goes. I'm trying to like walk through and imagine the space in its sort of complete and finished state. And as it gets closer to it, that desire to see it at that final state kind of ramps up.
So we're here on a Saturday morning, and when you first came in and opened up the space, do you feel pressure?
The pressure comes and goes for sure. There's a lot of hype because we started doing this with already a decent following for the cart. We'd been operating at the farmers markets and at a street spot on Elgin. And in working on this, we had to stop doing all of the farmers markets and that.
The day-to-day operational stuff.
Yeah. And so I stopped feeding people.
Right.
And the longer this takes to happen, the more people are like, where's my bao?
Right.
Like I literally have strangers walk up to me and be like, where's my bao?
For real?
Absolutely.
That's like awesome.
Almost every day.
Really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's the sign that your product, your bao, your what you're producing has an established audience, an established customer base, and potentially a real demand. When you say hype, a real potential for more customers, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How as an sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, what when someone comes up to you point blank, and I think I saw this one night last week when we were hanging out with
hey,
David.
Bao guy, I know you.
Yeah, and how did that feel? Like for you, how did that feel when people are saying, where's my bao, man?
I'm still trying to like figure out how to sort of maintain my composure and like still be myself. I just kind of like I kind of shut down a little bit. I'm kind of like, oh, cool, great, thanks. I kind of don't know where to go from there. But it's such a gift. It's like it's so humbling and it's so rewarding to see people so excited about what I'm doing. So
Big time. I mean, it's an indicator that there is, as I mentioned before, demand for this and an anticipation for the grand opening. So you transition from cart now to brick and mortar, as you mentioned, and that's, would you say that's a big leap for an entrepreneur in your field?
Yes. Yeah, because it's a bigger step than I was thinking of taking. Like when I started Gongfu, it wasn't even a food cart. It was the Gongfu project, and
Okay.
it was at this event. There was a fundraiser for Canadian organic growers, the Ottawa chapter. I paired up with a beef farmer friend of mine because I had helped him figure out the cuts for his grass-fed beef CSA, because he's like delivers sort of packages of beef, Grazing Days beef, amazing. You should interview him next.
Plug the brand.
Yeah,
Plug
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
He's so good. You should talk to him and his
For
partner
sure.
Jose. Amazing.
Cool.
Sorry.
It's all good.
And yeah, and when I agreed to do this event, I shortly thereafter got a call being like, okay, so we've got Paul and Grazing Days and we've got Tarek, but what's your business name? And I was like, oh, when do you need that?
Right.
And they're like, yeah, we got a couple of days. We need to sort of produce our marketing materials and such. And so I went to my notebook where I had all these like harebrained sort of concepts and ideas. Because like throughout working in the food industry, like working in restaurants for the better part of a decade, I was still like, I was dreaming about doing street food one day. And so I had like all these different concepts for like pop-ups and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pulled together this brand, Gongfu, specifically for that. But back to the point on iterations and how I really intentionally took a very iterative approach to building this food business. Because what I saw time and time again in the industry that I was working in was people that were taking a concept or an idea or a location or just a desire to do something or a cuisine that they're interested in and deciding I'm going to spend $400,000, $500,000 and open a restaurant and see whether or not it works. And to me, that was insane. And like, that's why you hear all those statistics about X in whatever percentage of restaurants disappear in the first year or whatever
Or
it
2
is.
years
Right?
or whatever.
Yeah, like, and that's why it was such a struggle to get like this bank loan that like is part of what's helping make this happen. They were like, "You're a restaurant, you're high risk." I'm like, "No, it's because a lot of restaurateurs take a high risk approach to it." But for me, it was always like about steady steps. So I did this like event and people were interested in the product and in the brand. I was like, okay, I've got something here. And when the city put out a call asking for submissions for the new street food vendor permits, it was a bit early in terms of where I was picturing myself starting my own business. But I was like, you know what, I'll just go through the motions. It was actually pretty funny. It was I got called into CBC on a sick day to like be on a panel discussing the like selection criteria for the new permits. And so I was like, oh shit, I gotta actually read up the application process so I can be part of this panel.
Right.
And when I looked at the application process, I was actually really impressed with what the city were doing. In terms of their selection process, they involved like organizations like Just Food and Savor Ottawa as part of the panel that scored applications for the new street food vendors, which was super cool, very progressive. So I decided to go through the motions so that when I was ready to do it, I will have like gone through it, you know?
Right.
So it's just sort of, again, as an iteration, right? But
And what did you think and feel when you decided, hey, I'm going to go through the motions? What were you thinking and feeling as far as? Were you taking a risk to a certain extent?
No, it was really safe, right? I was just sitting on the ledge of the pool being like, I'm just going to look. I don't even have my swimming trunks on. I'm just going to look.
You're naked.
I'm just going to look at the water.
Yeah.
No, I got like jeans on
Okay.
and a hat, everything.
Sure.
I'm just like,
and mitts on.
It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah.
I don't need to do this. I've got ice cream in my hand. I'm not even going in. I'm just looking.
Right.
Maybe like stirring my toes.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But when I dipped my toe, the water was warm.
Okay.
And the sun was shining, and it was just like ready for me, right? Like when I started writing a business plan, I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense. And then when I started writing menus, I was like, oh shit, this is something. And the further along the process I went, the closer I got to the point where by the time I had an application ready, I was like, if they offer me one of the spots I'm interested in, I might actually do this. Yeah. And sure enough, they offered me my favorite spot.
Which was?
Which was at Elgin and Slater, right outside of Confederation Park.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't the most popular spot. There were other applicants that scored higher than me, but none of the ones that scored higher than me wanted my spot. So that was pretty cool.
So this is where a lot of office workers, public servants and what have you, pedestrians would be roaming around
most
hungry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And most importantly for me was that it was right outside of a park, Confederation Park. Because for me, one of the challenges of doing street food is not having a space where people can eat. And for me, the really hot spots, like say right on Bank Street in the middle of the
Hustle and bustle,
commercial district, you get a lot of traffic. But that's traffic that's people that are going to grab their food and go back to the office, or take it home or whatever. And I wanted somewhere for people to take the food and sit down and eat it.
Why is that? So what is that about the experience that's important to you?
That's exactly the word. It's the experience, right? Like it's not operating a food business is not just about offering a service or a product. It's really about an experience. And so for me, that experience was not, I couldn't conceive of the whole experience, and so couldn't really have any control or input on those parts of it without having a space where people could eat. And it felt really nice to sort of like claim this park, this gorgeous park in the middle of the nation's capital.
Right.
Like, this is my park.
Yeah.
And look at all these people eating bao is mine.
They're eating your food, yes. Yeah.
That was neat. Not as much of an ego trip as I'm making out to be, but it was neat. It was neat. And so when the city said, here's the spot, I was just like, oh shit. And I almost didn't go for it. I was like, I'm not ready for this. And I actually connected with my friend Matt from Fidel Gastro. He's like experiencing huge success. He went from pop-up event thing to a food truck to a restaurant. Now he's got like multiple books published and TV shows. He's doing amazing stuff. And I went to Toronto for a workshop with him about starting a food business. And it really resonated with how I've been like thinking about starting a food business. It like we really connected, and he was just like, do this. You've got something good, you should do this. And sure enough, I came back from that workshop and I was like, all right, let's start an Indiegogo campaign and see if we can raise enough money to buy a cart. Yeah.
How was that Indiegogo campaign? And I believe you've done a few campaigns.
Two so far.
How was the first one?
So the first one was a slog because it was.
And what was the objective of the first?
It was to raise $12,000 to pay for the food cart. Yeah, and and it was a slog because people didn't really know about crowdfunding yet. It was a little bit too early. And if you remember the Rob Ford video debacle,
sure,
that kind of brought crowdfunding in the public eye in a bigger way in Ontario about 2 months after my campaign ended. I was like, all right, now people know what, and like people like that, like they just didn't get it when I was running it.
Sure.
Were coming back and being like, hey, you still doing that thing? I know what it is now. I'm like, no, it's done. But it was still like a relative success because I really didn't have anything. It was just the merits of the brand and the concept and the food I was going to be serving. And we got to half our goal. I raised $6,000 from nothing, which was good.
Which is amazing. From nothing. I mean, 6 G's halfway through. That's
and that gave the friends and family that kind of helped me get the rest of the way the confidence to be like, hey, you've got 100 people, most of which I don't even know.
Right.
Pre-purchasing your food because they think this is a cool idea. Okay, I'll lend you $1,000.
You've got believers.
Yeah. And so got the cart built and hit the streets. And the first couple of years were bonkers because I was really just trying to focus on the food and have an impact. Mm-hmm. And it was not about running a business. It was not about my well-being or health or it being sustainable in any way. It was about making an impact. And so that first summer, I was literally going all week with a couple of hours sleep a night and then crashing for a full day and then starting again. And it was just
intense.
I'm surprised I made it through. Wow. Because I was just soloing the whole thing. I had support, but it was all on my shoulders.
Give us an idea. Break it down as to your routine in terms of what you were doing and how much time you were allocating for.
So it's interesting because it was this sort of continuous loop. I'm trying to figure out where to sort of start describing the cycle. Sure. Right?
Sorry,
it's telling. So let's say I'm waking up from my 20-hour slumber with some breaks to eat.
For real, 20 hours?
So I'd be out of commission for 20 hours. Maybe not in bed for 20 hours, but
full exhaustion. I'm just you're done.
Yeah. Okay, and then we're okay, I'm back in. So that would be going to the piggy market where I was renting kitchen space, mixing dough, making fillings. The fillings cool while the dough is proofing. I portion the dough. And we make the buns for the day. I make.
So how many hours is that so far?
It was a while ago. We're looking at a couple of hours for mixing dough and starting the fillings. A couple more hours for finishing the fillings. A couple of hours for portioning because I would batch portion the dough because the dough balls were stable in the fridge for a couple of days at the right temperature. And it was maybe 2 to 3 hours of shaping buns and making sides and sauces and garnishes.
All solo.
I had some support. I had my friend Mitch would jump in once in a while to help me out, but often it was solo. Not always, but often. And so that would usually mean I got, if things were cooperating and I wasn't having dough problems, because there was I was still also learning the process and learning the how the dough behaves differently in the different seasons or in a different space or when I change the flour. So they're always oh, that dough didn't work out, restart. Or I screwed the filling up, let's figure out another filling with the ingredients we have. There were also surprises that just kind
Interesting. So the R&D end was happening concurrently with the deliver or die timeline.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I could see
Gongfu of it, right?
Wow. Yeah, I could see how you were in the thick of it and going 100 miles per hour. And I can tell as you're describing that it was a very physically, mentally challenging and exhausting experience. Looking back now, would you say that was the pace you created and the drive that you had, was that necessary in terms of where you are aujourd'hui today?
I feel it's part of what brought me here. There might have been smarter ways to go about it, possibly, but it's what brought me here, and I wouldn't change it.
What has it taught you? If in a few words, what has that experience? How has it shaped you?
Mm-hmm. It's
as an entrepreneur
Well, the one major part was just developing the craft, just like doing it the hard way on my own for a long time. Put this shit in my hands, like that's the only way to develop a craft. As an entrepreneur, it taught me about managing myself, managing my time. One key piece in terms of how the offering at Gongfu evolved was about finding the right balance between what it is I want to do and what it is people are looking for. I find in food, it's easy for someone to err on either extreme, whether they're like, this is my food and this is how I'm doing it, that's it.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. And on the other extreme is like, we have to do absolutely everything according to what people expect and what people want. You want this on it? We'll do it with this. You want that? We'll do that. You want all of these dishes? Let's do a million menu items. And neither one is the right approach. You sort of need to figure out where your foundation is and set that in stone and be like, this is what I'm about, and that's not going to change. But also be mindful of what people's expectations, what's driving them, what compels them, what they're getting out of an experience, and be mindful of that so it can inform where you vary from that foundation. So learned a lot of those lessons along the way. I also learned that if I push myself to a breaking point, then all of it goes to shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I definitely approached those breaking points. And some of the smartest decisions I made throughout the process were when I decided I was going to stop, or when it took me probably a full year to really get the hang of saying no. When someone is like, hey, you want to bring your cart to this thing? Hey, do you want to do this event? Year one, it was like, yes. I was at Winterlude, minus 35.
Wow, that's awesome.
Minus 35. Outside, standing beside a cart.
Wow,
steam buns.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
that's a quintessential Canadian, moment and story right there. That's cool, man.
Yeah. But also, like, I'm still in I've been here for like 25. Many years. I've been in Canada for many years. But there are still like sort of Canadian winter lessons to be learned. Like,
of course,
don't wear steel toe boots when you're working outside of minus 35.
Why? What happens?
Because those steel toes freeze. Yeah. You can't do steel toe.
Lesson learned. You mentioned the learning to say no, and this is it's a very important thing that be it entrepreneurs, creative people, so on and so forth. It's one thing I think universally it's fair to say people struggle with it. Why do you think for you at the time it was hard for you to say no? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. But there were, because my main sort of driving force was to make an impact, to make a name for myself, to get more people to try my food. And ultimately, I needed to sell more buns to make the whole thing sustainable. So to me, it was just like I guess the sort of macro driving force was say yes, sell more. make more, right? And it's the sort of no was kind of that micro essential stance that needed to happen at the right dose for everything to actually work. Yeah, and like coming from like having studied user experience and design, constraints when you're looking at like a design scope and design decision making, constraints are like such a powerful design tool, right? Like when you have in a creative scope, when you make a decision to place a constraint, like we're doing this and not this, that's so powerful. That's such a gift because that like makes like an infinite number of decisions down the road for you because you've just made that decision that this is a constraint. Yeah, so both in sort of a day-to-day decision-making and operating capacity, saying no to fitting in that wedding catering after the Chinatown remix pop-up the morning before the food truck rally, which is like literally the kind of shit I did.
Back to back.
Wow. Yeah. With like back-to-back prep for the week before to get set up for all of that, right? Yeah, just not sustainable.
Were you more focused on the tactical level as far as just produce, and as far as your overarching strategy, like did that come afterwards? Were you so focused when you say on making an impact that you, at the operational level you were like, yes, I'm gonna be here, be there because I need to make an impact? But would it be fair to say at a strategic level you weren't looking at your well-being as far as your whole holistic approach, you know, considering that over time, you know?
I think that would apply in a couple of ways, in that to some extent I made a conscious decision about that this stage in the business was about making an impact. And so I was going overboard in terms of like the prep and the ingredients we were using. I was just like, fuck it, this is not going to make me money, but we're doing this. We're hand julienning all the vegetables for the slaw. Like Mitch was like, you're nuts. What are you doing? I was like, no, this is how we need to do it right now. And we'll settle into something more sustainable eventually. But right now it's about going all out, because without making that impression, without having that impact, you're just going to like hang out in mediocrity indefinitely.
Wow.
Right? And so it was like
hang out in mediocrity. Jesus.
Right?
I feel like I've been run over by a truck when you said that, because there's I could completely understand your sense of urgency to deliver and apply yourself and dive into the deep end as opposed to drown in mediocrity. But sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And
have you made an impact? Looking at this whole journey, have you made an impact?
Looking at my 18 feet of hood in front of me and the takeout window that we just cut into the wall on Gilmore Street, I'd say this is impact.
Yeah, of course, of course.
It's working, Garmamie. It's working.
Totally. Now, moving on a little bit, speak to us about, real quickly, tell us about the Ottawa food community in terms of, how would you describe the average person who goes out and buys a meal at a restaurant, or who are these people? Well, what are their habits? Give us a profile.
Oh, that's a tough one. There's so many.
Sure.
Many. Yeah,
in Centertown in particular, where you are here.
I feel... Well, let me give you what drives me, and I think this will probably resonate with a good number of Centertowners. There are different food experiences that we'll seek for different reasons at different times. There are meals that are like celebrations that are like specific, moments of opulence that are, let's go do this thing, and there are meals that are like the day-to-day, like quick and dirty, just like let's grab a shawarma, that they can act as a substitute to making some food at home yourself. And more and more people in North America and people in Centertown specifically are realizing that quick and dirty doesn't need to be all that dirty.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
you can still eat well within like a reasonable price point. You can also still like spend money on well-sourced and sustainably produced food that's crafted by people that are like that are in a sustainable living situation working at these establishments. There are more and more places that are sort of in that middle of the road place where it's not fast food that's like hyper focused on the bottom line and the cheapest possible offering, but it's not a pampered indulgent experience of like a dining experience. So like very often people are looking for a good meal but aren't looking for the like that sort of even the like that social burden of going in and sitting down for a meal and having someone topping up your water and asking if you want a beer, how about dessert, like there's like that's a more involved thing than just a meal. And it's a beautiful thing. Like I love going out for a good dining out thing. But I feel Centertown can use more just here's some food kind of things, and that's made well, that's sourced well. And so that's what I'm trying to tap into with Gongfu, is to be about the food rather than about a dining extravaganza.
Who are your customers? Give us a profile of these people. These people.
These people. Well, when I tried to do demographic stuff for the business plan, because that's what all the things said to do.
Sure.
I struggled because when I looked at and thought about who ate at the cart, it was everybody, and it was one of the things that I was really into, was that like lining up side by side in front of the cart and sitting side by side on the benches in the park eating their bao were people from all walks of life. And that diversity was really like, I don't know. It was really rewarding to see my food just bring people to like the same level of just like standing in line waiting for their food and then sitting on a bench and eating their food.
What were they telling you about the food? What sort of feedback did you get? What was the best compliment you've ever received from a customer?
There was one that really, I could give you a couple. So one was from a Chinese tourist, and he said you could sell this in China, which was really validating of like the care I put into representing the cuisine and the food culture within which I'm working, because that's really important to me.
Sure.
So that was a neat sort of validating piece. Another cute one was a woman that took her first bite of a steam bun and said, "This is like eating a cloud with bacon on it."
Wow.
I was like, okay.
You should put that. You should quote that printed on its shirt, and Who was your first customer? Do you remember your first sale? As far as at the park there, do you remember your first?
Oh, you're gonna get me in trouble. Who was it?
Your first transaction.
Who was my first transaction? I can narrow it down to like a handful of people, but I can't I can't
Fair
tell
enough.
exactly who it was.
You've had
It
a
was-
lot.
right?
You've
yeah,
had,
and like, well,
You've had
so
a
there
lot
was
of
there was the
transaction.
cart on the street. There was also before the cart, I was doing lunches on Fridays at the piggy market. Yeah.
You're an engineer by training, right?
Yes.
Yes. But you transition from engineering into the culinary world. You clearly have a passion for food and entrepreneurialism. What triggered that transition? Because it's for someone who's listening to this, I think that's a big. Would it be fair to say it's a big leap? And why? What triggered it? What motivated it?
So in my time in engineering, in computer systems engineering, I, near the end of my time there, realized that working with technology and with machines wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. And I shifted towards more of a focus on user experience design. I took on like a bunch of site courses and got into the whole user experience world. And I was like steering things in that direction.
As far as online user experience, or in the physical space, or online, like
in terms of software development.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah. So user
I thought you meant
interface design, that kind of
web
stuff.
development, as for websites and.
Yeah, and that sort of kept me in that scope of work a bit longer.
Sure.
But then one thing that sort of took me away from my studies, both engineering and user experience and design stuff, was this soup kitchen, pay what you can lunch operation at Carleton called the Garden Spot.
I remember that.
G-Spot.
Yeah.
And honestly, Garden Spot took up at least as much time as my studies. I like it. It stoked the fires of my passion for cooking. Like I'd always loved to cook since I was a kid, but it let me do more of that than just sort of cook a meal for myself or for me and my roommate. And it also got me more engaged in social justice work. It gave me sort of a medium in which to engage with that world that was like important to me. So I'd make food and bring it to protests and shit, which was cool. And so when I finished up my schooling and started doing some like contract work, doing some like user interface, software development stuff, pretty quickly I realized that that wasn't the life I was meant to lead. And as soon as I finished up that first contract, I was like, I made a list of the restaurants that I would work at, and took resumes to all of them. And I got hired at a bakery, and then at the Brownloaf Bakery and at the Green Door. And so I did both, and it sort of started there.
Good for you for listening to your gut and getting out of that line of work. What did your friends and family think about your transition?
They thought I was stupid.
Why is that?
Yeah.
I think most people,
yeah.
quite frankly, unfortunately, think that, hey, why would you leave the safety of professional career in as an engineer, whatever, doing user experience development, so on and so forth.
And it's not even that like I stopped school and changed directions. I was stubborn. I completed the program and did additional stuff to like steer it more towards the user interface stuff. And the main argument was like, just do this for a couple more years and make some money, and then you could like open a restaurant or something. But I felt compelled to dive into a craft. I wanted to start at the bottom rung and peel onions and wash potatoes and take those steps, take that journey.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's fun. It's interesting because the more one delays what they want to pursue, say you're 10 years into your career as an engineer, 20 years, and you say, oh, I'll do it when I'm as a retirement thing. It'll never. I won't say it will never happen, but as time progresses, the probability of one doing what they truly desire can become smaller. Because if you haven't done it yet, chances are you probably won't. Right. So we're here right now in your space. There's construction going on, and things are progressing. What's the state of the construction?
It's really coming along. There are a couple of things that are potential delay factors that I'm waiting on answers about. So I can't actually lock down an opening date. But right now, it's not unrealistic to aim for the middle of next month. So mid to late May. And as is like, it's sort of part of the process for a project of this scope. You kind of have to set targets, but also not be attached to them. You need to set goals to sort of hustle towards them, but you can't sort of be attached to them until you've got a lot closer to where you need to be. But it's definitely coming along. Like last week we cut the takeout window in, and it's looking like a restaurant.
It's like you were saying before, it's like a child, right? It's like your baby is growing, and it's coming. It's happening. We wish you all the best. Where can people find you online? I know you've got quite the local following, but to tell us where we can find you online.
If you go to gongfu.ca, that's our website. You can also find us on the different social medias. We're most active on Instagram, Gongfu Bao, GONGFUBAO.
Instagram, you're getting the millennials. Smart man.
Right?
Yes. Yes. Well, all the best to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Garmamie.